You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Listeners of TWIRx of This Week in Pharmacy, special episode today. I had a dream. My goodness, probably 10 years ago. And it involves a friend of mine who's been in my life for more than 15 years in the pharmacy business, Mr. Josh Parastani. He's one of Pharmacy 50's most influential. And obviously the reason is because he's so dedicated to the realm of survival and thriving of our independent community pharmacy, so much that he put out a magazine called Dispense Times. And I was thrilled to hear about that because my version of This Week in Pharmacy, if you think of the original kind of thought of this, was to use a magazine as a way of pulling over content and then expanding that content through discussions, through podcasting. So I'd like to welcome Kris Rhea, who's on the board of advisors. Kris, welcome to TWIRx. And I can't remember what role do you have over at Dispense Times?
Yeah, Todd, I think I am actually the president of the advisory board.
There you go.
So we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. But thank you so much. I'm so proud to be on the advisory board at all. We had a really good meeting a little while ago. But Dispense Times has come a long way. And I tell you what, the website is out of this world. The accessibility of the information that's available. Shout out to Josh once again for doing such a good job. If you're driving, if you're walking and you don't have time to look, you can go to your YouTube channel and actually find this interview. But this website looks amazing, Kris. It's broken up into several different categories: news and clinical operations, technology, marketplace. And then, of course, my favorite part is the magazine. And a shout out to Dr. Nicolette Matthews. She's on the cover of our latest magazine edition of Dispense Times. But Kris, talk to us about your involvement and how you got involved in Dispense Times.
Yeah, Todd. So, there are other periodicals out there that are dedicated to pharmacy, but when talking to Josh and other vendors in this industry, a lot of those folks said, hey, there's nothing dedicated to just the community pharmacies, right? There's a lot of good clinical magazines with clinical type of information, but what we wanted to come up with is something that hit four strong pillars of pharmacy ownership and community pharmacy. And those pillars consist of clinical expansion, so operating at the top of your license, legislative efforts, so what's going on from a legislative standpoint in both the state and federal level, and then also pharmacy economics. So what are pharmacies doing to keep their doors open and keep a sustainable business? And then the other one being workflow optimization. So when it comes down to it, we're looking for content and we're looking for vendors that solely are focused on those things. And I think that has resonated with community pharmacy owners, where we have about 8,000 to 9,000 readers on every issue.
It's freaking amazing. I love this. I love the fact that, like you said, it's very purposeful. It's not just a magazine for magazine's sake. There's really some structure and the type of issues and themes that you're dialing into. And then the powerhouses that we have on our team, Bruce Nealon and Darshan Kulkarni and you and Josh and Leanne. And it's just, there's people to start off. I'll just start off this way for listeners. Everyone that's involved in this magazine, from the board of advisor to the editor, we are personally vested in the success of pharmacy, and more importantly, I think the independent community pharmacy. And here's what's happening. It's evolving. So you back up 10 years ago, Kris, and you remember very well, pharmacy was different. And now we're finally seeing PBM reform really getting some bigger teeth, stronger grips. Tennessee, you can't own an insurance company and a pharmacy. Same with Arkansas. That's going to continue. So as we're evolving and as things are changing, we need publications that are up to date with those same things that are happening. And then better than that, we have to have publications that are giving us blueprints and guidance to what's gonna be the next evolution of independent community pharmacy. Because I guarantee you, as I'm saying this on this podcast on this wonderful Friday, that things are going to be vastly different in 2 to 5 years from now for independent community pharmacy than they are right now. And I want you, Kris, to kind of give some testimony to that, because the reason why you and I are on that same page is you were around, 10, 20 years ago within independence. And that was a different world.
Yeah, Todd, when I came into this industry, I remember just wanting to learn from the drugstores. So I took in a flyer from the DA about the rescheduling of hydrocodone to a Schedule II. So that kind of shows, how old I am in this industry. And ultimately it is, where is the puck going? How can the folks that are operating community pharmacy have information and partners that instill hope and ideas that are going to shift their paradigm thinking from, well, that's how I've always done it, to, well, this is how I'm going to do it because I care about my community. My business has to remain viable and I'm not ready to throw in the towel, right? So obviously there's a lot of non-controllables in this industry, and I empathize with everybody that works in a community pharmacy. We know that all you want to do is have a profitable, prosperous business and take care of your customers in the community. And that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be a trigonometry. That should be just an easy, hey, I care about people and I'm a pharmacist and, I'm going to be successful. But ultimately, unfortunately, there's a lot of money in drug supply, and that creates a lot of tentacles and big corporations and companies. And what we're trying to do is just make sure we can help small business owners navigate those waters.
So something that, I've been in, like I said, pharmacy quite some time, same as you. And I would see organizations, publications use the word omni-channel, and omni-channel pissed me off. I was like, where's the omni-channel? I see a written piece and maybe a link to a website, and that's it. What I am so excited about, Dispense Times is going to be bringing us the written piece, the magazine, the blogs, the podcasts, the videos. So it's really omni-channel. And one of those sections is the marketplace. And I want to give a shout out to those vendors and those companies that are way ahead of the curve, who have already invested in this publication and in doing some really interesting things. A shout out to Freza. We're going to be doing a lot more with that organization. But talk to us about these organizations, Kris, and giving some reference to how they're using a true omni-channel environment to come at the reader from multiple points of view, and rather than just a traditional magazine.
Yeah, I think it starts with the networking aspect. Like you said, Todd, everybody that's on the advisory board has a vested interest in pharmacies staying afloat, right? Our businesses rely on community pharmacies prospering, and we made sure to pick entities that to work with that aren't exploitative of pharmacy. So everybody here that is listed and everybody that is represented on our advisory board, we've vetted and we said, look, the value that you're adding is exponential, and we just want to get the information out there to the drugstores. So it is a strategic approach that is, okay, we're going to run ads in the magazine, but we're also going to create content that is educational, and we're going to involve the podcast that Todd's doing. We're going to involve, just a multi-layered approach that is going to create an easy way to adopt good, innovative practice.
if you're a marketer, if you're a director of marketing for a pharmacy technology system or a program or something that you're like, wow, I want to tap into an organization that understands my market. They understand the world of independent community pharmacy and not only where you are, but like Kris said, where the puck's going and the specificity of that independent community pharmacy. Maybe they're dialing into wanting to expand compounding, or maybe they're dialing into a program for contraception in their community because they've lost a big center that used to do contraception, and you really want to grow that as a business. Not only is this a magazine and not only is it a publication, but it's a network. So if you come to Dispense Times, Dispense Marketing, Dispense Organizations, dispensetimes.com is the easiest one to remember for those driving. If you don't have it, there will be a link in the show notes. But if you reach out to the Dispense Times organization, even if it's not, if you're not advertising right away, there is a network here for you to help you be more successful. So it's going to eventually help community pharmacy, independent community pharmacy be more successful. Mankind, the pharmacy marketplace, Data Scan Pharmacy, Outcomes, RMS, InfoWorks. These people believe in the success of independent pharmacy. By the way, as a place setter and kind of as a short little break, talk to us about the evolution of the pharmacy marketplace because you know that piece of it pretty well.
Yeah, Todd. So, pharmacy market, it's a perfect example of adapting to the market needs, right? You mentioned PBM reform a little bit ago. When we came out, our predominant focus was on helping pharmacies, buy drugs optimally, right? However, with PBM reform, we've designed some new modules around helping pharmacies file underwater MAC appeals, right? So it is asking our pharmacies to adapt to the market and also putting our money where our mouth is and adapting our technology solutions to the market as well. And this is just one example of a commitment of, hey, we're doing our best to make sure we are skating to where the puck is.
I love that. I love that. So you've seen the evolution of this just as I have. What I said earlier about a publication that is following the evolution. What are some other things that Dispense Times is doing and positioning to bring more value to the pharmacy owner? And this isn't just the single pharmacy owner, pharmacy publications in general, like I'll say Pharmacy Times and Drug Topics and all these, the grandfathers, the ones that kind of set the roots and were and still are great publications. But they never really dialed just into the survival of how the community pharmacy is impacting their individual community, how pharmacy deserts are ravaging the accessibility of healthcare in general. So talk to us about other things that Dispense Times is doing to position our independent community pharmacies.
Yeah, Todd. So a great example would be a few years ago, I had a pharmacy owner that had owned a store for about 25 years. And his wife wanted to go to San Diego, and a trade show just so happened to be in San Diego. And we were able to get him and his wife out there, and they had a wonderful time. And he was able to network in a way that he'd never been able to do. And he took me on the side after the show, and he said, "Hey, I really appreciate you pushing me to do this." He said, "I've been operating in a vacuum within my four walls for 25 years, thinking that that's the best thing to do. Just put my head down and do what I know to do and take care of patients." And I agreed with him. That is the best thing to do. Focus on your patients. But there's so much out there from our peers, from quality vendors that care about pharmacy and don't want to exploit pharmacy. And that's what we're trying to do, is create an ecosystem through this magazine that really is like, okay, if you get your head out of the business and just look at it from a broad perspective, what are some of the strategic things and some of the ideas that you really need to focus on? And here are things, find the things that you're passionate about from a business perspective and the things that your market needs. And hopefully those will, intertwine a little bit. And that's where your pharmacy business will be going, right? So to bring it full circle, Dispense Times is trying to help pharmacies concentrate on ideas and concepts and vendors. And it's really just an educational opportunity for drugstore owners and folks to help, the viability of their business.
Yep. I want to go back to something you were talking about. You kind of gave some reference. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, streaming through YouTube, you'll see on your screen the philosophies of the magazine that Kris mentioned earlier. This is coverage built around how independent pharmacy actually operates, and not just today, but what's going to help them excel and be profitable in the future. And we're talking about pharmacy operations, reimbursement and economics, technology and workflow. That's a huge one. That's actually where my career started from, was the technology side. Our clinical expansion, absolute must, industry policy, marketplace and solutions, and then one of my favorites is marketing and growth. Kris, take us through a couple of these and just kind of cherry pick maybe a couple that is near and dear to your heart, and how these blueprints fit into the ecosystem of our independent community pharmacy owners.
Well, Todd, definitely all of these are passions of mine. And as the kind of the president of the advisory board, I'm trying to find content contributors and vendors that are specific to these areas, right? And we welcome any pharmacy owners to make recommendations or to get on this website and give us content. If you want to submit an article for Josh to review and me to review, we'd welcome the opportunity. And what we have is we have the best and brightest that are in these areas. Like you mentioned, Nicolette Matthew being on the cover of our latest issue. Nicolette is a marketing guru, and she's a clinical expansion guru, and now she's become a technology guru through her Dottie platform, right? So what she's doing is she's trying to teach pharmacies how to take advantage of the compounding opportunities, how to collaborate with physician partners and utilize data analytics to know where to prioritize their efforts, right? So that is an example of how marketing and technology and clinical expansion all come into one through Nicolette's best practices. And one that I'm really, really passionate about is reimbursement and economics, and tie that into industry policy. So we mentioned PBM reform. Every day I see another article about a state that is trying to push for some type of lower limit benchmark that pharmacies can't get paid under. And, as those laws come into place, they're only as good as the participation of said drugstores. If you have legislative efforts happen and you spend all this time and energy and it passes, then pharmacies don't actually take advantage. Well, what happens is the momentum shifts back to the PBM lobbyist, right? So what we're doing is this latest issue, we highlighted the Tennessee law and how that came to place and how CVS was trying to be a bad actor and fight it. So that would be a very engaging article if you're passionate about PBM reform to read.
I love it. It's a publication that is following what's happening in the healthcare system, what is happening to the ecosystem of pharmacy. That's why I'm so excited to be a small part of it. This is exciting. We're going to have more this week in pharmacy that's going to be dedicated specifically to Dispense Times stories, Dispense Times partners, advertisers, roundtable discussions. I want to give a shout out to all of our listeners. If you want to be a part of this, this is not ours. This is yours. This is the listener that's in pharmacy and wants to make a difference. I want you to reach out. Go to dispensetimes.com or reach out to me. Or if you know Kris, you're linked in to him on LinkedIn. Reach out to Kris. Let him know that you have an idea for either a story or something inside business operations or technology or marketing or whatever it is, this is the way that we change things, Kris, is by doing and working together. And I think Dispense Times is like the foundation of what we're going to really be able to build different things off of. And then let's meet up at conferences. I'm headed to McKesson Idea Share. I'm going to be headed to RBC, Cardinal Health. I'm going to be going to the Syncora Thought Spot. So if you're going to any of those, Kris, promise that we're going to get a chance to say hi to each other, maybe even have you on one of the shows.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll be at, I think, a majority of those, Todd. So I'm sure we'll see you around. And I just want to reiterate the inclusive philosophy that you were positioning there. This is not a good old boys club. This is not some VC firm that's come out with some periodical. This is a group of people that are passionate about community pharmacy, and we want you all to participate through writing articles or requesting specific content, or vendors participate. This is something that's here to empower community pharmacy owners to continue to operate and do what they do best, which is take care of their customers.
I love it. I love being a part of it. Thank you so much, Kris, for being on TWIRx today. We have more collaborations upcoming. I hope you have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks, Todd.
Feeling lost with the complexities of pharmacy accounting?
In pharmacy today, there's so many different, variables and issues that impact the pharmacy books, records, accounting, the profitability of the store, so forth. There's different components of pharmacy that have its own nuances from an accounting standpoint. And so it's tricky. There's no doubt about it.
Ready to take your pharmacy to the next level but don't know where to start? Sykes & Company is here to help. Introducing the RX Assessment. With the RX Assessment, the pharmacy CPAs and advisors at Sykes will do a deep dive into your accounting and tax situation and give you the action steps you need to take your pharmacy to the next level.
If you're interested in, working with a team who understands the industry and how the accounting and tax should really be in a pharmacy, this is your chance to get a under the hood check of what's going on and getting the feedback of any issues or concerns, or again, things we think you're doing really well with.
Get the financial checkup your pharmacy needs and head over to sykes-cpa.com or call 252-482-7644.
Hey, welcome back to This Week in Pharmacy. Quite excited to have run into James Maskell, who's the founder of the Evolution of Medicine. This plays into much of what's happening to the pharmacy profession. We know that there are pharmacists out there who are known as deprescribing pharmacists, consultant pharmacists. They're dialing into senior care, dialing into pediatrics, even helping with hyperactivity with children. And where pharmacists come in to balance the pharmacological, the development of medications, and the realm of functional medicine and natural medicine. James Maskell, want to welcome you to TWIRx.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, out of the gate, you are not a pharmacist. So give us some of your background and tell us about the evolution of the evolution of medicine.
Yeah, so grew up in a community where there was a lot of healthy things happening. No one in my circle knew what a chiropractor was or a homeopath, but I had a little bit of that in my world. I did a degree in health economics. I realized we were going to fall off a massive cliff with the cost of chronic illness. And I moved to America in 2005 to try and understand, where does chronic illness come from? Is it reversible? And ultimately, I've been on a journey to understand that. And in 2014, I started a business called the Functional Forum. It started with a meetup group in New York for practitioners interested in functional medicine. It became a worldwide phenomenon. We had 450 meetup groups on 6 continents with practitioners of all varieties getting excited about the potential of functional medicine and the operationalization of functional medicine. And then I showed up at a functional medicine pharmacy conference, I think maybe the first one, that was in 2019. And part of my job with the Functional Forum was to go around and interview people doing cool stuff. And I found a lot of pharmacists doing cool stuff, reorganizing pharmacy around health creation. And some of it was some of the things you mentioned, deprescribing, consulting, physically reorganizing an independent pharmacy to put health at the front and drugs at the back, the whole shebang. And I got really excited because I felt like here's a trusted profession, and in general, you know, these pharmacists want to do the right thing and want to help people get healthy. And so I've been on a journey the last 7 years really understanding the pharmacy world and seeing how we could use that as a lever for this evolution of medicine.
Don't you think we back up to the advent of compounding in America in an industrialization age, the mid 1800s, where the local physician was also the local pharmacist. And when they'd show up on the farm and they were compounding a very specific medication for a very specific situation, and they were following up, and it was very natural driven. Then, of course, the beginning of the 1900s, and we started seeing more the development and manufacturing of specific medications, and now we're on the other end of the spectrum where we see a lot of the pharma manufacturers really wanting to hold hostage, because that's the way I think of it, hold hostage the compounding pharmacist that does a lot of more customization. I feel like the balance was lopsided, too much on the pharmacological side, and we almost have to bring it back to the personalization. Personalization is that key word.
Yeah.
Talk to us and share with us with allergies, with gluten issues, with things that have happened, hyperactivity in children. Talk to me about that balance, and talk to me about what personalization, how important personalization is for modern medicine.
Well, I'll give an example at the apex of functional medicine, the hardest kind of condition to work with. And I want to talk about cognitive decline in Alzheimer's, because on one hand, you have 0 drugs that have ever worked to reverse cognitive decline, to actually bring function back, for someone to actually like get back their driver's license that they had lost because they, had lost function. The only examples of that happening are in functional medicine, which is essentially delivering a personalized approach. What does that look like? Well, these drugs are looking across all of these different mechanisms for the one mechanism that will affect Alzheimer's. And I think if that had been true, we already would have discovered that. But if you understand that maybe Alzheimer's there's a unique set of subsets that drives the pathology, subsets of root cause, and the work is to identify what's going on in each individual and treat accordingly. And there was the first randomized controlled trial that came out in preprint in the end of last year and is coming out this year in a prestigious journal. 92% of people get better from a disease that no one ever got better with any drug for. Now, there's all kinds of examples under that of all the other chronic illnesses, but my view is that Alzheimer's will teach us what some pharmacists have already seen and started to evolve their practice towards, and some people have not seen yet, which is that a personalized approach, understanding the unique physiology of the patient and treating accordingly, is a lot more of an effective way of dealing with chronic illness, but it takes a different set of skills.
It does. So when I look at the pharmacy schools and the intensity of that 4 to 6 year run of becoming a pharmacist and an expert in medication and the expert in chemistry and how it impacts you, how it impacts your metabolism, or how your metabolism actually plays into it, or the advent of pharmacogenomics, where they're testing people's genes to see how they're going to react to medications. The more of these new technologies that are now being studied and coming out, the more I see functional medicine rising as a solution to many of the mysteries of what people are going through. And in my opinion, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a physician, but I've hung out with pharmacists now for over 20 years. I listen more podcasts than anyone about pharmacy over the last 17 years. And what I've learned is there is no silver bullet. It's you don't just go with, here's this medication that you're going to be on now for the rest of your life, and that's it. That's all you have to do now. Instead of, I've seen so many pharmacists. Marina Buskov is going to be on This Week in Pharmacy coming up after this interview, and she spent her whole career how does she take what nature has built and what nature has been designed and what substances are out there, and how do we apply this to the realm of living hundreds of years ago, or how humans were able to survive certain things. So what's my issue, my frustration really for pharmacists that want to pursue this? Sometimes they feel shunned by the pharmacological world, by the pharmaceutical world, of saying, oh, this isn't evidence-based. But it may not be documented the same way, but there are people like Marina, for example, and you, for example, and Delon Canterbury, and so many other pharmacists who are doing things where they have studied and they have practiced and they have documented, just hasn't been published, in a journal in certain ways. But where do you see a way for us to infiltrate what is the world of medicine in order to get more physicians and more pharmacists, collaborating together in the realm of functional medicine?
I mean, it's already happening. It's just not evenly distributed. So, if you go to the conferences, you can meet other practitioners who are taking this medicine into health systems and community pharmacies and organizations. And, where 12 years ago, when we started this, there were very few technologies that had been built around this group of practitioners. Now there are tools that can allow you to do this at scale with very little setup and organization costs. I interviewed someone the other day who's a community pharmacist who, has basically built the health system that she needed and that all of her patients want. And she just decided to do it and is now supported by all of these different companies and organizations. The next phase of what I see happening in functional medicine, it's with what we started on, with the Functional Forum. The first effort was to introduce people locally to each other who wanted to make a change, and we did that for a long time. The next season, I think, is really creating structures that allow all the people that have seen the light to work together to be able to take this from something that is still a little bit clunky, hard to learn, not nearly as efficient as just giving everyone drugs for the symptoms that they have, into something that could actually be an operating system for each of the different, chronic illnesses. But it has to get more efficient. But ultimately, there are plenty of examples now of pharmacists who have just decided they want to do this. And ultimately, they don't necessarily care about the pushback. They really care about the person standing across from them. And how many times you have to see, unorganized, out of control metabolic disease before you realize, I have to step in here and be a solution.
The exciting part is I'm seeing independent community pharmacies that have had issues with staying in business because of the very wrecked and misguided world of the PBM. And now they're starting to move towards cash-based systems that include health coaching, medication review, and customization. They're doing a lot more consulting, and they're able to make money. They're able to stay in business based on some of these new programs. Your coaching systems, what aspect of the sectors of pharmacy have you worked in? I mentioned senior care. I mentioned pediatrics, obviously independent community pharmacy. Have you worked with independent community pharmacy to really help bring these programs to a point where they can actually make a living on it?
Yeah, we've worked with a number of different groups like this. I'll give you a couple of examples. The pharmacist that I was just thinking about, Dr. Emla Tubuo, who's in Ohio, started off by doing some functional medicine, some consults, then has some nutrition available in her pharmacist, and has recently now launched what we call a full script journey, which is essentially competing with these big direct-to-consumer lab offerings like Function Health and Superpower and Aura Ring and all these groups that are selling labs. So you sell labs into the community. People want to know about themselves. There's this, urgency to understand themselves. But then if they have questions, they end up coming to you. So it's a way of bringing new business to your pharmacy by selling the thing that patients want, which is the labs. Another example, Easton Bryant, we've worked with a lot, who has, transformed his little pharmacy in Kentucky to a nationwide powerhouse, with membership programs and pharmacy, but also like particular clinical programs around all different areas. So there's a range of the kind of people that we've worked with, and there's a range of the innovation. And that's really the sort of the early, that's always a sign of an early movement, is that people are working itself out. What we're doing is just, sharing best practices. And I'm happy to take a call with any pharmacist who, feels the pull for that and is looking for a community of other like-minded people who could be supportive, resources on how to make the journey easier. I'm very, very interested right now in polypharmacy, getting people off medication, deprescribing in the elder population, and how that could happen in senior living centers, because as I sort of hinted at earlier, I'm really interested right now in reversing cognitive decline, because it's just an area where functional medicine has an unlimited opportunity because of the lack of medication. So in any of those situations, I'm happy to take a call. You could book a concierge call on the website, or you go to goevomed.com/concierge, and you can set up a team with, set up a meeting with me or someone on the team.
You also have a very popular podcast where you dive into specific issues, talking with other providers and other issues that you come about. Share that with our listeners as well. The Evolution of Medicine podcast.
Yeah. Evolution of Medicine, that's the place to go. Goevomed.com. You can find the podcast. You can find the concierge calls on there. We're tracking, different organizations that are, and different people that are innovating on the front end. Some of that is clinical, some of it's technology, some of it's business models. And we've always had those three topics, because ultimately it takes those three things to enact the sort of change that we're seeing. Because, for pharmacists who have a community pharmacy, what is the business model by which we create health? That is not that's not an obvious answer to that question, and lots of people are trying different things. And I think we can find something that works for you, no matter what your focus, no matter what your system, no matter what your current job status is.
James, this has been great. I really appreciate you spending time with us and talking with me. And shout out to our listeners out there, pharmacists out there, technicians out there who are really trying to change the game. It's coming. That we're seeing less pharmacies focused on the prescription and more focused on the total health of the individual, driving down diabetes, helping to reverse issues and make diseases less impactful to people's lives. So this is great. Once again, give the website. I'm going to have it listed on the screen as well as the show notes, but give the listeners a way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can Google the Evolution of Medicine, but it's goevomed.com, GOEVOMED.com. Come and hang out, set up a call, and, listen to the podcast, and we'd love to be in touch.
Thank you, James, for being on TWIRx. We appreciate it. Promise me you're going to come back.
I would love to. Yeah, I love the pharmacy community, and I think you can be a big part of this evolution of medicine that we're all co-creating.
All right. We'll be right back with more TWIRx.
This episode is sponsored by Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, widely known as IPC. Established in 1983, IPC is the nation's largest group purchasing organization owned by independent pharmacy. With a mission of maximizing the success of community pharmacists, IPC works to provide members with access to effective programs and services designed to enhance profitability for independent pharmacy. Read more about our mission by checking out our website at ipcrx.com. That's ipcrx.com.
Hey, welcome back to This Week in Pharmacy on TWIRx. I don't know if this is Marina's first time on TWIRx, but Marina Buksov, who's been a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network for quite some time. Welcome to TWIRx, Marina.
Thank you so much, Todd. Yes, I believe this is my first time here. I'm excited.
Yeah, shame on me for not getting you on sooner. You have been the leading voice on the network around herbal medication, holistic pharmacy. You're consistent constantly. You're always bringing us amazing discussions on the network. Talk to us about using podcasting, by the way, to get your messaging out there, and how that's evolved over the years for you.
Yeah, I believe my first podcast was close to 9 years ago. That's when I decided to just start airing some of my thoughts. And it started out with just me reading some of my earlier blogs about my work and my research and the foundations of health and how that's coming up in my own life and in my clients' lives, and what I'm noticing from both a pharmacy and a much more holistic perspective with herbal medicine and other approaches. So that's how it started. And since then, I've been going consistently year after year. And now I'm in season 9. And each year I have about 22 episodes. So I publish every other week. And I believe like 5 or so years ago, we teamed up and we started co-promoting, and I joined the PPN, which has been really amazing.
That's awesome. We so much appreciate you. The content that you developed, a recent episode regarding menopause, and there's so much mystery around that. And you just put out incredible content for our listeners. If you're not watching us on YouTube or on LinkedIn and you're just listening, there's going to be a link in the show notes to the Holistic Pharmacy podcast, which is the podcast that Marina's done for 9 seasons now. Boy, that went fast.
I know, right?
All right. So today's episode is really all about the rise of functional medicine, integrative medicine, the world that more and more people are wanting to understand. They want to live better lives. They don't want to take as many medications. They want to understand, and they know based on history that there are more natural ways to deal with preventing and combating disease. And talk to our listeners just to set the stage if they haven't heard of you. How'd you get into this, and how long have you been researching and studying herbal medicine and holistic pharmacy?
Yeah, great question, Todd. It's honestly been quite a long journey, and I would say both on a personal health journey level where I was seeking solutions for my own health. Specifically, shortly after graduating pharmacy school, I found myself at this professional crossroads as well. So that it kind of all played a role, right? Both my professional life and being trained as a pharmacist and my personal health challenges kind of shaped what I'm doing today. So basically, I just found myself conflicted, seeing that in retail pharmacy, which is where I went into, there's just so much medications and our patients are just not getting better. And then my own stress and my own health struggles kind of made me ask different questions, like what else can we do? And I have tried conventional medicine. I'll start off with that. So that's the first thing I did as a pharmacist, is go to all the things you're supposed to do and see all the professionals and even take drugs and be on long-term polypharmacy, treating symptoms of a medication with another medication. So kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, why am I doing this when I know as a pharmacist, this is not the best way anyway? And there's a lot of non-pharmacological steps too that I wasn't being told about. I even ended up choosing to have elective surgery, which unfortunately did not solve the issue that I was having. So I just felt like there was a lot of aggressive therapy recommendation that I did agree to, I did consent to, but I wasn't really given other alternatives or other information or even a promise of success or like the statistics around it. So it just got me really questioning, like, what system am I part of? What system am I actually working in? And it got me questioning, why are we dispensing so many medications and why are people so sick and just not getting better even with the medications? So I started researching, I started seeing other providers, I started seeking out acupuncture and anything and everything from like chiropractor and craniosacral to energy work and Reiki, like you name it, I've probably tried it. And that gave me a lot of perspective as a patient And then I also wanted to change what I'm doing in my practice. So I started taking all these courses in health coaching and nutrition and functional medicine. And eventually I found herbalism. And to me, it gave me the other side of the coin to pharmacy. Like they go hand in hand, actually, because they originated from the same profession, right? There's the doctor who diagnoses, and then there's the herbalist or pharmacist who is the medicine expert. And our medicines back in the day were all from herbs. They were all from whole foods and herbs. And botany and all of that was very, very intertwined. And then we hit a point where we could now synthesize, and we had a whole industrialization happening, and then we had a demonization as well of anything that wasn't synthetic and industrial. So that's how we ended up with a completely different conventional system and then a completely separate alternative model. And so I am of the point of view that we actually should be considering all the options. We shouldn't just say like one is the standard of care and one is substandard. I think it's all valid, and we need to look for the valid parts of all of them.
So Marina, let's put on our conspiracy hats for a second, and look at the evolution of medication, look at the evolution of medical education, look at the evolution of pharmaceutical manufacturers. And I can't help but to think that healthcare, medicine, treatment, and therapy got hijacked by too much of the capitalistic side of things, instead of remembering that nature has brought us so much in place in order to prevent and treat different things that a human's going to go through. And the quick fix mentality of America, more American than Eastern realms of our world, they want to take a pill. They want to be done. They don't want to exercise. They don't want to eat right. They don't want to practice, healthy living. They just want to pop this pill. And the world that you and I are from, I've podcasted for 17 years about the pharmaceutical life cycle, about the ecosystem, about pharmacy care. I'm in it. So when I discuss this with family, with friends who also don the conspiracy theory hats, we all say the same thing. We all agree that something doesn't seem right, and it's been gobbled up by, like I said, the big corporations shunning people like you, saying, "Oh, Marina's a quack. She's quacky. She's doing crazy." I'm 54 years old. I've been around in business now for 33, 35 years. And never in my life has there been more pharmacists that are actually coming out leaning much more into integrative and holistic and functional, and proving with their own patients that in fact it's working and lives are changing. So give us your input on kind of that, and is this the best time, and is this the best time in history right now to be a pharmacist?
Oof, I have so much to share on that.
You only have 5 minutes. No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah, I think, from like a bigger worldview perspective, we really need to look at the evolution of human history and understand that we are not separate from nature, and nature is not there for us. It has evolved to include us, and so we are part of it and we are nature, but it doesn't just exist there for our pleasure and our use for medicine, right? So like we have co-evolved with the other 4 kingdoms and also other species in our kingdom, the animal kingdom, right? And so I think when we try to take ourselves out of that ecosystem, or like put us above the ecosystem, that like everything here is for us and we need to just be serviced, right? And like everything else is subservient to us, that gives us a really complex foundational and philosophical problem because then we end up doing like the extractive models, and the constraints of our current capitalistic society like actually create the problem that they're then trying to fix. So it's sort of like the FDA, right? It's supposed to have a balance of like providing healthy foods, and then when that fails, then okay, there's some medications you can take, but there does need to be a balance, because if you're not looking at one, then there's going to be more stress on the other. So under the current industrial and capitalistic model, we're just now told to work, and go. And so nobody has time to not take a pill and miss a day of work and what have you, right? And we kind of saw that during COVID gave us an opportunity to slow down and actually think like, what are we doing with our lives and what's going on here? And so it was a big reframe. And I think looking at other countries and like historically what's been done, it's always been foundations first. And it's always been like lifestyle and food and rest and creative pursuits. Like all of these things are the foundations of our health. And like the pill for every ill model is like somewhere very, very like at the tip of the iceberg, right? Where it's like, we have a really annoying symptom, so we can take a pill, but we're not actually addressing all the causes that are downstream of that. And so that is what functional medicine and other types of medicine are trying to ask. It's a different question. It's like, why do we have this symptom? What's going on in the physiology? And how can we start to correct the causes, the inputs, right? Which is really caused by our life, right? It's like the things that we do in daily life. It could be medicinal for us and it could be not so great for us. And it's like the 1% gains or losses over time that are going to be compounding into either a healthier body or into a more disease-prone body. And so like these are all the complexities that we're faced with, but the current conventional system, it's kind of like the assembly line, right? It's like there's a process and we all go to these different specialists and they're all looking at one tiny piece of the puzzle and prescribing a new prescription for it. And us as pharmacists, we're the ones that get to see all of that in their profile, hopefully if they're going to the same pharmacy and not pharmacy shopping around, right? And so we get to see, wow, this is the big picture, and this person is suffering and they're going to all of these places and they're getting all these prescriptions, but they're not actually getting better, and they're sort of becoming a legal addict, right? They're just coming back to get their refills month after month, but nothing is really changing because they're not addressing the root causes and what's actually making them sick. And so that is why it is, like you said, the best time, I think, right now to be a pharmacist, because when we get this bird's eye view, we can't help but have alarm bells, right? It's like, I don't want to be that person, and I have, again, been sick and I've been through the healthcare system and I've had emergency situations where I was in the hospital, and I'm glad we have that. And it's time for the pendulum to kind of swing the other way a little bit, where we're not so focused on emergency medicine and like always having the big guns, and having enough time to actually invite slowing down and understanding why are we all so sick in the first place. And understanding that will help us to design a better system.
So we have 330 million, roughly 330 million people in the United States right now as a population. We have roughly 366,000 pharmacists. And think of how many of those pharmacists that are looking at a patient's med list who gasp or say, I have 600 prescriptions to check. I'm in the fast food pharmacy realm. I'm pumping out prescriptions. I'm looking at this patient's profile. And if I could just take time with that individual patient and really dial into what's really happening, that's the hijack I'm talking about. Pharmacists, pharmacological usage hijacked by fast food process. Let's keep the money flowing, and never giving a pharmacist a chance to slow down, take the patient, set them aside. Hey, let's talk about your diabetes, or let's talk about hypertension, or let's talk about what's happening. Or you're having issues getting pregnant, or you're having, night sweats and you can't sleep well. And let's dial into what's really happening instead of, all right, take this next prescription, take this next pill, take this next pill. And it's just like, that's why I think what has been, you and I are going to remember this for the rest of our lives. I don't know if the young pharmacy students that are P1s right now in the pharmacy school, they might not realize this, but there's a plate tectonics thing happening in pharmacy right now because of the breakup of PBMs. And it's going to give us a chance to start building more value-based care, true value-based care, and really allowing the pharmacists to dial into what they're doing and start compensating pharmacists for their knowledge and their experience rather than the dispensing fee. If we can get away from that dispensing fee and leave the dispensing fee for the administrative stuff, leave it for the packaging, leave it for the electricity, leave it for the just kind of like the base stuff, but now start paying for the pharmacist to dial in to the individual so we can really understand what's happening. And of course, that's my dream. That's probably your dream too. But what do you think of that? How do we accelerate this change that I see happening? I finally see things taking hold in PBM reform, where we finally got the attention of Congress, and Tennessee and Arkansas. You're not allowed to own an insurance company and a pharmacy now, which is freaking amazing. But talk to us about this day and age of what you see happening.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, because we do have to talk about the monetization, the payment models, the compensation. All of that is what the incentive is, right? Like who is paying, who is receiving the money, and what are they paying for? And the current system, it's like the amount of care and treatment that somebody receives gets paid more. And then that's why there's a lot of fraud and waste things, no matter how many times they're trying to inspect and, prevent that and educate around that. It just doesn't work because of the payment system. It's just prone to corruption just because of human nature and politics. And this is the way things are. And so we do, I believe, need to change it for, like you said, a value-based system, which we've been talking about for decades, I feel like, at this point. And, I think there needs to be a level of public education and awareness too that is accessible and free. But for example, individual pharmacists shouldn't be expected to give all their knowledge away for free, which we have been all along. We never charge for our advice or our counseling. It's part of what we do. And yet we don't get to charge for appointments like a doctor would. Yep. And the patients are just kind of, again, running around from all these different offices and practitioners, and revolving door of healthcare with hospitals and emergency care, and then med reconciliation that happens or doesn't happen, and social work. And so there's a lot of pieces, and a lot of advocacy needs to be had so that the roles are clear. There's also creep of scope of practice that we have to be very concerned about, right? Like making sure that we do have that separation that allows us to be in integrity and to do our part without maybe overstepping on somebody else. Like I would never be expected to diagnose something because that's not what I learned in school, but I certainly can create a care plan, but as well as a doctor, I would think, if not better. So, I think there's a lot here, right? And so the whole vertical and horizontal monopoly thing, I just think has got to go. Like you said, why was that even legal before, that they get to own all these different pieces of the puzzle? I don't know, but I'm very happy that there's now more light on that and more clarity on that, because again, what we don't know, it's we can't fix. So that is all very, very good. As far as creating better systems of payment, I feel we should be showing results. How much money can we actually save, and which negative outcomes can we prevent by doing these proactive things and these counseling and, de-prescribing? Why can't I get paid for that? Why must I get paid for dispensing more and more and more? And also during COVID, we saw how, you know, how much we depend on this fragile system, to be honest, of supply and demand. And like all of a sudden, there were all these shortages of things that people needed. And it's like, we don't have a plan B. We don't know what else we can use other than that one thing that we were so dependent on. And I think anytime we become dependent on something and we're not flexible enough to switch gears is a problem. And I think that's what's happened with the pharmaceutical model. We're so dependent that something's wrong, we're going to get a supplier to fix it, we're going to have insurance cover it, and we'll be able to mask it for a period of time until the next thing comes along. Like, that is just not sustainable. And we need to open our eyes to that. And like me, for one, I don't want to be dependent on a system. I want to be able to walk outside and know what I can do, like you said, from nature, know what I need. And I wouldn't have all of these restrictions and policies governing the type of care that I can receive. So, it's a big topic. And again, there's lots of complexity, but I think it starts with awareness. And again, I wish for more public education. And I want us to go a step deeper, a step even beyond functional approaches and root cause medicine by looking at the root causes globally of what's making us sick from our environment and from the lack of regulation and policies from the government and from the businesses that are providing food for us and creating the type of lifestyle that we're all used to. And, and it's everything in our life, right? Like from the moment you wake up to where you live and what you do for work, it's like all of it plays a role. All the chemicals and the pharmaceuticals that are being sprayed into our food, into our environment, into our air, into our waters. And then we can expect to get healthy food from that, healthy soil from that, et cetera. And when we don't have a healthy foundation, how can we expect to have a sustainable model of care?
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Yeah, how do we expand the concept of blue zones? Why are the blue zones throughout the world where people are living the most full lives and they're living the longest? And what does that mean? And what do those areas have that New York City doesn't have, or Chicago or Miami? And it's just it's a return to nature, in my opinion. I'm sure yours as well, and more. Stop forgetting where we came from and what was and what is. And like you said, I love how you put it, Marina, that you said that we've separated ourselves from the ecosystem and we try to be the dominant being or entity within the system rather than being, one with it and working with it. This is exciting. We have to have more conversations with you. I want to encourage the listeners to look you up. You are on LinkedIn. You also can go to marinabuksov.com. There's going to be a link in our show notes. That's the wonderful website. Website's amazing. It looks great. It reads well. It gives lots of information to people that are very curious. Also, Marina, I want you back. So we have to talk more about the cash-based systems of building functional medicine programs inside communities. And a shout out to pharmacy owners out there that are listening right now. There is a lot of money that people want to spend if they thought, hey, is there an opportunity for me to tap into a pharmacist who really understands the science of this and become more holistic and more tied into herbal medicine and more. And the answer is yes, 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 yes. It's a setup and there's a process. And I want to get more pharmacists and more pharmacy owners connected into you, Marina. And I'm really excited to say that you have a special event. Share with our listeners what's coming up on Thursday, June 25th.
Yes, this is really exciting. I've been invited to an intimate gathering called Galilea, and we're going to be recording a podcast live about how psychedelic plants and medicine can be used in clinical settings for women's health. And this is part of the initiative by Galilea to train clinicians and have real and honest conversations because our patients are looking for other solutions. And this is one of the things that's been coming up in recent years. And as the politics around it are changing, as the legal status is changing, as there is more education and awareness, more people are curious and they're asking clinicians questions. And unless we're informed, we're not going to be able to support these patients. And they might go off and explore on their own in not such safe environments. And so we need to know what to be able to counsel on and how to have these conversations.
That's awesome. So if you're in the area, Brooklyn, it's the Galilea, the Brooklyn Gathering, Thursday, June 25th. If you're driving, you're walking, don't worry about it. I'm going to put this link in the show notes. Marina, this has been very special. Thank you so much for not only your work and membership at the Pharmacy Podcast Network, but thanks for being on TWIRx today. We got to get you more on TWIRx once in a while.
Yeah, this was so fun. I'd love to be back. Thank you for having me.